Awesome. Okay, welcome back, Jazz. We are at episode number 9, Digital Governance and Compliance. Are you ready?
Yes. Great to be back.
Great. Okay, let's dive in. So, as usual, our first topic is environmental impact of digital transformation. How do compliance regulations influence sustainable digital practices? And I feel like regulations are good way to keep the pressure on the companies that help to upgrade their infrastructure to be more environment friendly. It is definitely uh, good to be enforced such kind of good practices through the authorities using AI powered energy management systems, set up high efficiency servers, track carbon emissions, and many more environment friendly outcome of businesses is good to try. It keeps companies in line and also stay intact in the competition and towards helping for sustainability goals. Even where I live in the state of California in US, California is very tough state when it comes to environment friendly regulations. Um, there are many vehicles that we cannot register here in California. It is possible to do it in other states of US, but like California has very strong emission laws. So, and that is another reason, like the environment is pretty friendly here. That it's good to live in kind of a best environment, best climate in the country. On the other side, I believe like since data centers are heavy on carbon emission, it's good to have some regulations in place about large scale consumption of carbon energy. According to Morgan Stanley, the global data center industry is projected to emit approximately 2.5 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide by 2030. So it's definitely needed at scale of such authorities to pitch in and define some rules to save the planet. Especially European Union and United States authorities have set baselines for sustainable practices with certain rules and protocols, which is why large companies are committing to it. These days, I'm seeing like many companies and leadership are talking about sustainability. There is an annual event, COP, that happens just about climate, just about sustainability and renewable energy. There are business units are being created by large companies to just focus on initiatives around energy, sustainability, environment friendly, renewable, and to tap into this market. It's a great opportunity as well as the great goal to have. Moreover, companies' internal governance on digital practices should be implemented regardless of the regulations or not. But again, internal governance definitely helps to have that habit implemented even at the staff level, at the teams level. Little bit like initiatives from an individual purpose uh, helps big time at scale when it comes to like mass and enforcement of such rules even within the organization helps at scale at a bigger level. And definitely like under CEOs reporting structure, CDOs and CIOs can very well own it, and like leadership have to take accountability of it. It's not just benefit for the company, it's not just benefit for the the region or state, it is good for humanity in the long run. So having regulations in place and companies comply to that is is a great sustainable digital practice as such. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about COP, right? I think COP was a little bit controversial last year. I don't know. There seems to be some it's like a both good and bad things coming out from it. I mean, I'm curious to hear from your thoughts as far as to how effective last year's COP was, in your opinion. Because now I see like there seems to be a bit of a division now when it comes to talking about environmental and sustainability impact. Although people as a whole, I think collectively do agree that it is important. We need to do everything we can to save the world that we're living in, the land that we're all occupants of. But the approach of doing it, I think not necessarily aligned. That's what I'm seeing. What do you think?
Absolutely. That alignment is necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I agree that in general, we don't have governance. Governance is the start of everything. Because without governance, people create their own rules, which may or may not be for the greater good. It definitely can lead to waste if there's no monitoring in place. And there's like a lack of push in general for energy efficiencies and consumption, especially in terms of the data centers that we're now talking a lot about, the power plants, and all the way to how you properly dispose of hardware coming out from the data centers, which can cause toxic waste. And of course, the abuse of rare minerals in certain states, that's needed for microchips used to power the processors, the data centers, especially now with digital acceleration. It actually causes a lot of degeneration of these very protected areas that we all want to protect, and these are all mineral rich areas that we want to protect. So then in the longer term, what does that mean? Is there like a governance in place for sustainable harvesting of the rare minerals? What kind of guardrails do we have in place, and how far a step are the various organizations willing to take, working in collaboration with the local regulatory authorities as well as the citizens occupying those lands to protect these areas? I mean, it goes down to the commitment at the decision maker level. Like how far are they willing to make those hard decisions, even going against the flow, going against the trend, if needed. It's not an easy decision, I have to admit, to do what is right sometimes, as we've all been in big corporates where we witness for ourselves whether certain things are done right or wrong. Sometimes it goes beyond our control. But I do fundamentally agree that there should be governance. It's just maybe the way the nitty-gritty processes, underlying processes, the way they want to implement those processes and the rules, that could be a little bit more flexibility to make sure that you can accommodate different types of needs and priorities in each organization and each country. So that's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regulations. Yeah. So I always feel like when it comes to rules, when it comes to convenience, I mostly feel like we prefer convenience. So when it gets to that point, means like we start going against good versus what we want things, right? So having regulations, I mean, imagine the traffic, for example, like you drive on the highway, and we tend to speed up when we are having fun, good times with friends, going a long drive, but we we start speeding up, right? So unless or until we are afraid, okay, cops may catch us, so we just don't stop, right? So these are the rules I think are very useful, and tough rules, and That's
Mm.
gonna be the next topic also. Like, okay, what happens if you don't comply, right? So that's why let's talk about financial aspect of it. Like, and the question for the next pillar is, what are the costs associated with non-compliance in digital operations? So when we're talking about regulations and protocols around sustainable practices, uh, GDPR and CCPA are the top examples every time comes up on the non-compliance fines and penalties, and they can go up to like 20 million euros because GDPR came from European Union. So 20 million euros or the 4% of the annual revenue of the company. So it can calculate into millions or billions of dollars to penalties like non-compliance on the data privacy laws. So again, talking about regulatory practices here. So the cost association or the fines are very high in such case. And that comes even later, but even before that, contesting for the lawsuits and disputes for data privacy in compliance is huge too, because people always keep complaining about the privacy issues. And I have also have seen people keep asking about their information to report whatever personal information we have stored that belongs to them. We have to report all that. We have to have internal processes to answer such questions and inquiries to share private information. And having any loopholes or loose connections within that personal data of customers can lead towards big disputes, eventually to big fines and penalties. So the cost involved in the end for losing the compliance battle is high, but even maintaining the processes for compliance is also not less, right? So it's an expensive practice, but still cheaper than paying big fines and penalties. On the other side, it's not just financial loss, it's also brand loss and reputation problems. I picked up this example last couple of episodes also, like CrowdStrike. They had to issue discounts to their customers to just retain them because they had created big problems. And even though like the issue was small, but the impact was very high. This is not really a compliance example, but the perfect example for a mistake. Mistake could be related to compliance or operational, but again, recovery is always more expensive than maintaining a good practice. So another example for CrowdStrike is like a Delta airline sued CrowdStrike for the big loss that they had to face because of the problem. And actually, company paid multi-million dollars to sort this out. And there is a stock impact also, like they had to lose in value. So loss in revenue, losing customers, not just losing customers, but loss of new opportunities because people or the new prospects lose confidence in such big companies, right? So the cost of incompliance to good practices is huge. So, and data protection laws are very tight these days. So companies really have to have good practices in place, good data privacy, data intelligence, and data protection. Have to be very careful about it because these companies are global. Internet have made market very small. So, and every regional laws are strict. Like doing business in China have very complicated regulations. India have some other special laws also to comply with. Having a little mistake here and there can again like make businesses step back multi-million dollars. And even like if there is an audit happens, like externally or even internally, it costs effort, it costs time, it costs money. So
Yeah.
prevention is better than cure, I would say. So having good practice in place, comply to it, stick to good practices. That it involves a lot of money, but still much cheaper than paying huge amount in fines and penalties.
Mm.
What about you?
For sure, for sure. I mean, like there are a few recent cases involving the banking and finance sector here. I think one you probably would have read it yourself, making the news around the world. It's like a global bank who made a huge boo-boo in miscrediting funds to customers' accounts, and almost losing a huge sum of money. And the worst part is that it actually went through 2 employees undetected, and then they took a third one to actually detect it. Of course, when it comes to things like that, banks, they have a lot of compliance and regulation and governance. In fact, sometimes I wonder if it's the whole thing getting a little bit convoluted. And why I say that is because I've been through the experience myself being inside the organization before, and also looking at compliance from a marketing perspective at some point. The rules are so rigid, and they have almost monthly all the way to quarterly audits internally just to make sure that everybody is compliant. So this sounds really good in theory, as if you've got all your bases covered. Nothing should go wrong, right? But the truth is, when they are so obsessed, overly obsessed, it becomes very focused and very fixed criteria. They focus on specific lists. It's almost like a checkbox exercise. And then everybody just makes sure that they're checking off these specific areas. But whatever other areas, they might not pay too much attention to it because it's not part of the criteria. So that's kind of how people have been brought to think. As humans, we sometimes box ourselves into following processes because on a day-to-day basis, you're so bogged down by other things. You say, okay, I just want to get this done, make sure that I'm compliant for this month or this quarter, get it over with. But if something else, kind of like an outlier or something that happens by mistake, you might not even pick it up because you're so focused on just this, getting this done and getting this right and sign off to cover your base. So that's where I think sometimes it becomes overly convoluted. But rather, I think maybe they need to periodically revisit these rules, this checklist, this governance procedures, make sure that it is still keeping pace with regulations, is still following the right processes, or do they actually need to refresh some of these checks and balances? And also really consider using automation to support where there are proneness to human errors. It is disturbing if we're relying purely on a pair of human eyes to look at things without some sort of checks as well at an additional automation level, because that's where RPA comes in, that's where AI comes in. This is where AI is not the enemy. AI is actually here to help to make it more efficient so that you're not just looking through tons of paperwork manually at the back end. And then of course, another example is really the lack of proper communication by another financial company where they stopped withdrawals all of a sudden, and customers started panicking because they thought that their money is just gone or the bank ran out of money. That's the worst thing that can happen. So, and money is such a sensitive thing. It is people's livelihood all in there, right? So then things like that, it really damage your reputation and damage your credibility, the trust that people have fundamentally with you as a bank, as an organization. And that kind of reputational loss comes at a much larger cost than any fines that you can sometimes get from the regulators, because the regulators, okay, they fine you, you get a huge pinch. but then the reputational loss is it has sustainable effects, like very long-term effects, because then of course new customers don't think twice about you, and existing customers as well will start maybe trusting you less and then just going somewhere else with their business. So it is really important to consistently review the compliance, the process, what you're checking. Don't check for the sake of checking, but make sure that you are also using digital tools in the right way, in a smart way, and efficient way to help you with your processes. Yeah, so that's my
Yeah.
view.
No, that's a great point. Actually, yeah, it reminds me a general practice. We sometimes have to fast track on processes. We have to sometimes
Mm,
rush on doing things, just like having a
mm,
goal to finish, like some mission critical
mm,
stuff. So at times we try to skip processes. We try to you follow shortcuts.
mm,
I don't say it's bad to do that, because at times time is at stake.
mm,
So
mm,
meeting deadlines are important. Uh,
mm,
and at times also we have seen like we compromise on the compliance matters too. But doesn't
mm,
mean like when we are done, we just leave it as it is and start celebrating meeting deadlines. We can always like recover on those mistakes before damages happen. We can
yeah,
fix things where we skipped on any process, we can skip on any documentation or like any compliance related matters. It's it's not too bad to go back and fix the problems that we created if we had some other priorities at stake to address. It happens. I mean, in many cases, it's been seen that okay, if we have announced a deadline and there is a launch time at stake, and following processes can delay it. I'm not saying like delay the launch, just meet the launch deadline, but fix
mm,
everything later on before things start getting escalated. And
mm,
it's still okay to fix things before damages happen. So
mm,
because paying penalties, paying damages after they happen are more costly.
yes,
So yeah, this is still okay. And I think you said it right about human errors, about convenience things. So yeah, so we have to really make sure that one way or the other, we always have to stay
mm,
compliant. That's critical. Yeah, it's critical.
mm,
Things can come back and bite
for
later.
sure.
So better you fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the next pillar, operational efficiency. And today's question, in what ways does digital governance streamline organizational processes? Uh, it's pretty obvious that when it comes to governance, laws and regulations, we have to have very strict policies, processes, and frameworks in place. For example, GDPR, we just talked about data privacy. So it had to involve very strict processes within the organization, have to have data officer, have to have data processors, data regulation officers, and data management systems and data sharing regulations, like who to have access to the data. These are just few examples, but again, the point here is like we have to have very strict processes and frameworks in place, and have to have governance on top to make sure everyone follows those processes. It's very critical to the success to stay compliant. And not just having processes in place are enough. The governance party or the team or the department or the group, whatever we call it, have to ensure that those processes and protocols are very clearly communicated across the company based on people's roles and responsibilities, what part of the compliance that they have to take care is required to be communicated super clearly. It's important because like people, our tendency, we make mistakes, right? So, and if I'm not clear, like what I have to do on the things, that I can make mistakes. So it's governance responsibility to make sure processes and accountability is very clearly defined. Recently, technologies like AI have made it very simple to help automate policies and find discrepancies around governance, like flagging mistakes, defining rules, reporting performance, and even utilization of the systems available for the staff. There are beautiful reports, and AI can even predict any potential mistake or tag any if mistakes are already happened. So before damages happen, we can go back and fix it. So definitely, these kind of systems should be leveraged across everywhere. And resources utilization to be optimized is necessary here as well. To stay compliant, first of all, we have to have very clearly defined our efficiency. And that connection between like our strengths and weaknesses to comply and the staying compliance is important, so that the operational cost for staying compliance is low. On the other side, when it comes to data, tech stacks are very complicated these days. So deduping services and our subscriptions. Again, that's the previous topic about financial aspect of it. But again, having very complex tech stack can make even operational aspect to complicate as well. So we have to make sure our digital ecosystem is clean and efficient. And it will also help to stay compliant on managing data. And one last thing I would say, the downtime on any digital system is kind of one of most expensive damage. It can make lose customers, lose opportunities like CrowdStrike, for example. So managing systems efficiently is important from digital experience perspective, because customers is the key here, and by reducing the downtime, we can reduce risk of business loss. And also, when systems are intact, the uptime is good. It also ensures they are secure, and we can have less breaches on the security side, because healthy systems, high uptime reflects on the reliability of the digital systems as well. So that's a good example to have well-defined framework around digital ecosystems to operationalize it correctly. What do you think?
For sure. I mean, I think you bring up a good point about the multiple tech stack. First of all, from different vendors, of course, you can say that sometimes it can be riskier, because you kind of need to see how they all have their own data protection policy, management policy, and how that's being integrated, how that's complementary with each other and with your core system and your core policy of handling and managing, storing, retaining, and even disposing data that way, right? To make sure that it all syncs. And usually it's all hidden behind like stacks and stacks of terms and conditions and legal documents that nobody really bothered to read until something breaks, and then they try to point fingers or they try to find somebody to blame, and that's where they start going through it for the first time. So I guess for cases like that, I think it helps now with the AI documentation or smart AI, which save people a lot of trouble reading through huge documents. They can actually extract summaries of the essence of what these mean to them from an organizational risk and operational risk perspective, and then be able to quickly identify across all the different vendors what they should watch out for, and then how then they can integrate these better into their overarching organizational policy. And of course, coming back to the financial case that I talked about just now, from an operational perspective, they said that the funds didn't go through. They managed to stop it halfway. Probably was stuck with an intermediary or something. But then you imagine if the transfer went through, what would happen? Like, were they gonna freeze the customer's account, in order to withdraw the money? Can you imagine if the customer happened to check it and then they see a huge sum, and then after that it's gone, and then they realize that their account is just being frozen suddenly, what that means to them? Then that means there's a lot to do with their operational efficiency as well. What is the protocol when things like that happen? Do they even have one? So these are all part and parcel of making sure that operationally you're ready in terms of a governance perspective, especially when it comes to these digital platforms. And I talked about the use of AI helping with efficiency, but I also want to highlight equally important is when we consider the use of AI as well as what we call agentic workflows, which is going to be a very big buzzword that everybody will be talking about soon. I think governance and compliance is even more critical where we're using these workflows to make sure that there's no hallucination, there's no biasness in the workflows, the decisioning making, as well as in your data sets. Because once these workflows are in full motion, it can actually be harder to stop it without disrupting your entire workflow. It's not like you just press a button somewhere. But I see it more as a domino effect where once it starts, it's really hard to stop it without disrupting everything else. So then what would be your plan for such a thing, for such a scenario? I think it's also important to think about that. And then looking at the ownership as well involved, the people involved in the workflow, there has to be a maker and checker in place. Some people say with that, you don't need maker checkers anymore. I disagree. I think it's even more important to have those roles in place, and those roles need to be very clear about the defining logic of AI, like what is it based on, and what are the guardrails to test all the different scenarios before you launch it. What are the outputs coming out from it, and what are the boundaries that you want to set. So I think the maker checker role needs to be somebody that is informed, somebody who understands how it works. And then, because it's only then that they know how often they should review the workflows, the processes, the logic, and then how often they should revisit this to refresh it. It's not you just deploy and let it run forever. I mean, there's no such things, as we all know by now. Yeah.
I like the example, ownership, maker, checker. It's like a RACI metric that has to be defined on like processes around governance. Having a governance with the right delegation of these roles across the organization is critical to define like the guardrails and rules around it.
Yeah,
that's a good
for
one. Sure. Okay, let's move over to customer experience now. The question for today: how does compliance with digital standards enhance customer confidence? We're talking about governance and having customer experience relationship with governance is the key here. I was reading a report the other day about Cisco customers don't trust the company a lot. According to the survey, 76% of the customers in that sample said they wouldn't buy Cisco products. Cisco is not a small company. It's very successful. It's huge. It runs like almost the internet on their routers, but 76% is huge. I don't know what segment they surveyed and what product those customers have. I don't want to question the accuracy of that survey, but again, whatever the report
Yeah.
says, 76% is majority of the customers don't want to buy Cisco products. It does raise big questions about the customer experience of whatever segment it is, right? So that is important to have digital standards in such case to build trust with customers. Having a GDPR compliance and no issues around GDPR in compliance, to have good examples and build customer confidence. Just being compliant is one thing, but having no dispute around data privacy is a good example to showcase as well. Similarly, CCPA, it's about California. As I mentioned, like California is tougher state than others in the United States for the data privacy. ISO standards, and there are some other standard as well to make sure like data is protected and digitally savvy and robust companies that all build trust with customers and partners to do business. So as a customer, if I want to pick to deal with, I don't want to deal with a supplier, vendor, where I have a risk of my financial data, my health-related information, or any kind of personal data. If I'm not confident, like they can protect my data, I don't want to do business with them. Similarly, I would rather say, like most customers would think the same way. We don't want to deal with any business with data risk. We all prefer deal with businesses who can better take care of our information, and even in the long run, and like if we deal with banks and we have our financial and we keep hearing every now and then credit card information and social security information has been compromised. That's risky. They communicate it well, they address it fine, to at least recover on the customer experience issues. But again, as I mentioned, prevention is better than cure. So we always have to make sure businesses are proactively taking care of customer information and protecting that well. Robust and reliable operations are implicit expectations. We don't, if any business is promoting their processes are efficient, is not really a USP, because customers are expecting that. If you walk into the restaurant, you are expecting someone will come to you and ask for help and offer help. So you don't really be pleased with that. It's not a special case anymore. People should offer help when you walk into those restaurants. So similarly, having a robust processes is like implicit expectations these days. Any outage can affect customer trust and satisfaction. This is important. We talked about this in the previous topic about operational efficiency, uptime, and saving customer data. Having good processes in place is good, but if any single discrepancy is there in the history of company, can raise question mark on the company's data handling policies and processes and reputation, right? So no issues is a good case here. And I was stuck in 3 hours of a customer experience in one of previous episodes: reliable, relevant, and responsive. Responsive was the third R. At that time, I was not recalling. So what does that mean really? The company's processes are reliable. They never break. The customer experience is relevant. It's not say one shoe fits all policy, right? So businesses are very personalized way designed for the customer, so that it's like specific to customer needs and intent. And responsive, whenever customer wants, system works, right? So it's and even like when they call in, like customer support works. when they trigger chatbot, it works
Yes.
and it responds in the expected way. So that's what happened, and it can all happen when internal operations are efficient, when data is managed and connected correctly across the board, and when the systems are working fine. And it is not possible without digital governance, because that's what makes it happen. So yeah, the customer experience is the key, and like compliance with digital standards is a game changer or a deal breaker here. Over to you.
Yeah, I fully agree that there has to be equal accountability when it comes to customer experience and having compliance aligned with digital standards to enhance that very experience. Because ultimately it's all about trust, right? And trust and credibility, and these two are very easily broken. I mean, imagine it's like a relationship. Like one party cheated or did something wrong to break the trust. So then after that, it's so much harder to patch back and go back to the original state before that trust was broken. Because it's really hard. What you do, right, is more than what you say. It's really what you do and how you act and how you manage that customer relationship and protect that trust and credibility between you and the customer. And such compliance is not meant to be purely like inconvenient, but it's also not meant to be totally convenient in that sense. It might be very inconvenient for some people at the onset, especially when you need to do the usual know your customer, anti-money laundering checks, just to make sure that it is the right customer for the regulations to be compliant. But I think, of course, all of these processes can be managed more seamlessly from point to point from a customer experience perspective. They just need to understand the protocols and why these protocols are important to secure, protect their privacy, protect their account information, and to help them understand why these are needed. And it's more important to educate them and share this transparently with them more important than just keeping the steps for convenience sake, just because you want to check off the customer experience checkbox. Because that ultimately is part of building and maintaining trust with your customers, or even before they become your customer. Because imagine like if you are just sloppy in handling the account setup, to me, I would personally also question the credibility of the provider. How can it be that easy? Is there something wrong? Is there a catch to it? So then if we go back to just now the scenario of the financial services provider with the miscrediting, likewise, like how would the customer feel from there, right? Like, is my money really safe? Like, if you really give me a bunch of money all of a sudden, like, where's that money coming from? Like, is my account being hacked? Am I being used to help launder money or something? That's the worst case scenario. So all the things that will easily break your trust, and also break your credibility. So for sure, we need to make sure that there is compliance alignment with digitalization.
Yeah. Providing good customer experience is deemed expected. It's not a selling point anymore. So the competition is tough and customers are ready to move on. Yeah, it doesn't really a fancy KPI anymore. It is implicit. Like, it is definitely a base requirement that customer expect these days, like relevant and personalized information. And responsiveness is the key here.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. And right. That wraps our today's episode. Jess, thank you very much. Great insights, very useful conversation, and I believe it will be helpful to listeners. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Nev. Cheers.